2 o'clock, Okay. Charles Long,
Here.
Chris Martinson, Michael Shaw,
Here.
Priscilla Manuelito, Kevin Mitchell.
Here.
Okay. Thank you, Joan. We do have a quorum, so let's begin our meeting. Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, board members, and thank you for being here. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, Mike. And our tech person over there. Thank you. Is that Anthony, right?
What?
Andrew, okay.
And Mr. Sanchez is also on the phone, just in case.
Okay. Let's go down to item 2, approval of the meeting agenda. Board members?
I would like to make a motion approval of the agenda.
Okay, motion's been made by Michael Shaw to approve the meeting minutes. Is there, the agenda,
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kevin. Roll call, Joan?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Okay, we've adopted our agenda for today's meeting. Let's go down to new business. Number 3, new business A. Board members, Mike?
President Long, members of the board, as you know, because of the approvals that you've made, we have been moving forward with providing an online option, potentially a school, if the public education department approves it. If not, we're working towards an academy within our school district to provide an online learning environment for students that they can sign up for. This particular program initially was to fill a gap. One of the things that we struggle with, we have many students who have dropped out, maybe because they have to work or other demands in their life. We wanted to provide them an option that they could attend school in an online environment. We also have many people, not only in the county, but in the state.
Let me go open the door first. Somebody's knocking.
Somebody in the state who it's just a better fit for them, their family, maybe they're homeschooled and they need a curricular framework for their learning. And then obviously with COVID, there is also an increased demand for online learning. And we hope that this particular either program or school, as it is, becomes intact, that it actually can attract more students back to our district or into our district from other parts of the state. This would help not only with funding, but again, fill those gaps in helping students find what they need in our school district. There are many different programs like this across the state. They all look a little bit different. But we're trying to fill that niche not only in our community, but other niches in the state where they are not able to get the services that we could potentially provide them. So as you know, that we are moving forward with securing a contract. We procured K-12, which is actually their full name is K-12 Virtual Schools, LLC. You approved the bid, the award for that. And then it took us a period of time to work through the contract, which is before you, for approval. Mr. Sanchez and their attorney, along with administration from both sides, has worked many hours trying to get this to where it is appropriate contract, not only for us, but also for them, that what is amenable and agreeable to both of us. Essentially, one of the things, let's remind you of a few of the things. We did require that they do provide laptops and internet service for students. That way there was no difficulties for those low-income students that aren't able to receive the technology or things to participate in a program or a school like this. That is being provided for the students free of charge. And all the other requirements that the state requires as far as a learning environment is followed within the contract as far as all the laws in New Mexico, the teacher requirements, and every single piece that's required by law in New Mexico to provide an education for a student. Any questions?
Questions, board members? Thank you, Mike. Kevin?
I have a question. I don't know if it's in here or not. I looked through, but I didn't see it. Anything to do with like the kids who are being homeschooled and maybe want to get into the virtual portion of this, and then so they would be following Gallup McKinley County curriculum. Does that mean that they would have to be graded as well? And if even they're homeschooled now, we're the ones actually checking their work and giving them a grade?
Correct. So it's a face-to-face environment in that, not face-to-face as physically, but it's a learning environment where there's a teacher on the other end. So the standards of New Mexico will still have to be taught just like we normally do. The curriculum's going to look a little bit different because it's an online curriculum and not a traditional classroom type curriculum that we use currently. It would have taken years for us to integrate our exact curriculum into an online learning platform. So we're using the company's K-12 curriculum, which is aligned with Common Core standards, which we're still under. With respect to students, yes, so a student would enroll in our school district. They would attend either the school or program through our school district. There would be teachers that would be working with them, special education services, all of the necessary requirements to provide an education depending on the student's needs. There's also a component to this on career pathways, which fits in with our school district, which was a requirement of ours, that there is a component within here that students are being prepared for their career, even though we're not seeing them face to face. And so it's the same thing as whether a student's in our district or whether they're in this particular program in our district. They're still getting the same services. It's just that that student is able to not physically have to be at school in order to receive that education. So graduation is the same. The testing requirements are the same. It's identical to, we have to follow, again, all the laws. There's no difference between whether they're physically in our school or in a virtual program. Does that answer your question? Did I miss a piece?
No.
Okay.
You have the question? Michael?
Then for the, how much is it gonna cost for each student?
Right, so that was very difficult because, as you know, in New Mexico, essentially, we put a bunch of data into the funding formula, and then it produces a level of units, and then we get a certain amount per unit. So it's not like we stick a student into the formula and you get an amount, how much that student produces in the formula. So it's very tricky. So that's the hardest part of the whole contract. We had to come up with a number that when if a student qualifies for, like, for example, special education services, it takes more money to provide those services. So that number that we have to pay to provide services for that student is going to go up. But one of the things we were very careful about is impact aid. If a student comes into our district that doesn't produce impact aid, then we lose $1,800 from that student. And so we factor that into the amount. If a student does not receive impact aid, then automatically $1,800 is subtracted from the amount that we pay the company, so that we come out not behind in the funding that we receive. There was no other way to figure out, so it's kind of a sliding scale depending on how many students there are that are enrolled in the program or the school, and then that's broken down by what services they need with respect to special education, and then that comes to a specific number. It depends on the enrollment. So I couldn't give you the exact number because, again, it depends on if there's a higher level of special education students, it's going to cost more because we're receiving more money and that money needs to go to those students. If there's less special education students involved in the program, then they're going to receive less funds. In the end, the odds of us losing money are very slim, which is what we tried to make sure, and the odds of us making extra money within this to provide services, because as you know, operational dollars go to support school facilities too, and buildings and air conditioning and all the utilities. So we made sure that we could still have those dollars coming in to support the needs of our district.
One other question, now, is it just available for the students in Gallup McKinley County schools, or can students from outside the district apply?
Great question. And this is another area that we're gonna have a meeting on Wednesday, if approved, to start discussing what that's gonna look like, because the capacity is probably gonna be a certain amount in the first year. We gotta figure out what that capacity is gonna be. But this is actually gonna be open to any student in New Mexico. So it's not only our students, but also students from the outside wanting to either come in, or students that are in our county that are not part of our school district that can come back to our school district. One of the things that we want to be careful of, though, is that we're looking at how we prioritize that. Originally, what we were looking at is trying to help students come back to our school district. So we want to make sure that if a student is left, especially if it's a reason because they couldn't, the traditional environment wasn't working for them, we want to try to attract those students back so they can finish their diplomas. But there's other situations where students have needs, whether they may have a child or may have other work requirements. If they're in school, maybe they're a priority to be able to be part of this program. If we did it with the COVID right now, if we let 20% of our population go into the school, that's going to cause us a lot of funding problems. So that's not realistic. So it's going to be a slower start, and we're going to probably have to come back to you on what we come up with as far as parameters of letting students into the program. As far as letting people that are not a part of our school district come in, no problem. As far as students that are in our school district, we're going to have parameters on who can come into the program and who not. And then there's obviously going to be a cap. At the start of this, initially we projected about 500 students in the first year. I would expect 400 of those are not a part of the school district, and maybe 100 a part of the school district, just as a guess. We just don't know. Now, all of that was before the COVID pandemic, and so that has complicated things to some extent, things that we didn't foresee. But again, this is to fill a gap and also to bring more students back to us.
Now, on the program, can they, like, be working during the day and then take the classes at night? Or is there certain time limits that they have to get online to take classes?
So it'll be flexible. Just like in a typical learning environment right now, we have students that are doing dual credit with a college. There's a face-to-face teacher on the other end.
Yeah.
But they can do those classes at different times. So it has a level of flexibility. It's not a set time frame from one part of the day to the next. But that teacher is accessible during certain hours because a teacher can't be available 24 hours a day. So it's going to be that kind of an environment. I guess that makes sense. There'll be there's the content online. It's not just emailing back and forth. There's actual curriculum online that goes through the lessons that students complete, that teachers are working with. There's counseling that's happening, special education services that are happening. It's just all done virtually.
Kevin?
I have a question on faculty, I guess. So faculty is going to be locally, or is it going to be just from somewhere else, or and what number of faculty are we looking at for 500 students to start?
Sure. So the faculty will be employees of K-12, although we will evaluate them. By law, we have to have an administrator overseeing and making sure that those teachers are evaluated per state law. But the teachers themselves, per the contract, they have to be New Mexico licensed teachers. And in the contract, we actually made it so that they are New Mexico, they have to live there from New Mexico. So you're not going to have somebody from Baltimore or Alaska or wherever else teaching our students. So they'll get paid through them. We don't pay for the staff. They're not part of our union or anything like that. So that's the separation. We oversee them as far as evaluative purposes, but as far as payment of those employees, monitoring of the HR aspect of those employees, that's taken care of by K-12. And K-12 will be located here in this building. They'll have staff. We'll have our staff, a few people that are working with them to make sure we take care of our end of the agreement and legally monitor the program, and they'll take care of all the other business of providing the education.
So this is similar to our food service then, kind of?
Yeah, I guess there's some level of that, although we don't evaluate our food service, so there's much more interaction with our staff and those instructors. because we're responsible for making sure that they're teaching properly and that they're following state law, that we're dealing with complaint process and other things that may arise per state law. So we basically handle the legal end, although K-12 is also responsible to follow state law also in that agreement. But yeah, there's some similarities.
Other questions, comments? And if not, what is the pleasure of the board?
I would like to make a motion of the approval of the K-12 online school contract.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Okay, Michael Shaw made a motion to approve the approval of the K-12 online school contract. Second, Kevin?
Second.
Goshi. Roll call, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes. Okay, thank you, board members. We approved the contract. And I guess that's pretty much our business for today. What is the pleasure of the board?
I would like to make a motion of adjournment.
Okay, motion's been made by Michael Shaw to adjourn. Second? Okay, second by Kevin Mitchell. Roll call, Joan?
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Long.
Yes.
2:16.
2:16, we're adjourned. Thank you, board members and staff.